and welcome to the very first episode of the Woolens and Nosh podcast. My name is Michelle. I'll be your hostess, and you can find me on Instagram as Woolens and Nosh or on Ravelry as Michelle the Maker, and Michelle just has one L. So I'm so excited to be here. I've been thinking about it for a while. I have this theory. It's not scientific or anything, but it's a theory that there is a huge, those, what are they called, Venn diagrams? We got the circles and where they overlap. That center piece in the middle is that segment. There's a circle of fibery arts people, and there's a circle of people who enjoy baking, and they overlap like a lot. Like only the little thumbs hang out. Like there's a lot of people who like both. And so I thought, wouldn't it be fun to have a podcast about both? I love both. Let's talk about both. So the format of the podcast, I believe, is going to go like this. There's going to be a short baking section at the beginning, and then transition over to the knitting portion where I'll share works in progress and finished objects and, life general sorts of things and dream knitting and all that kind of stuff. And then we'll segue into some shameless promotion for my shop, woolensandnosh.com. So without further ado, let's get on to the baking. Today, we're going to make some scones. Get so excited, it's scones. No, they're, there you go. I'm just going to leave it there. So today we're going to be making the cream tea scone, a modified recipe from King Arthur Flour's Baking Companion. So yeah, this humble scone, so good, but so simple too. So the recipe is going to be found either in the show notes or I'll put it below in the down bar. But right now I'm just adding all of the dry ingredients to my mixing bowl, and then I'm going to whisk them together so that they're incorporated well. It looks like a lot of whisking, but it really wasn't too much. I just figured you'd get bored watching me do it. So I am using all butter in the recipe. I have cubed it into about 1/4 inch cubes from a stick of butter and left it in the fridge while I was doing all that mixing, and so it's nice and cold going into the dried ingredients. I'm going to fluff it through the flour, make sure it's covered so it doesn't stick to my hands, and then I just pinch each little cube into a little flat, misshapen disc. And I just keep doing that until I've pretty much squished all of the little blocks. You could use a pastry cutter. You could use a couple of knives. You could use a food processor if you felt like it. But I feel like that these flattened cubes that are a little larger than peas, quite honestly, I don't like that pea sort of description, really lend to the flakiness of the end product. So just leave them a little chunky. They like being chunky. If you get it to where it looks like sand, you've gone too far. Then we're going to beat an egg and add it to buttermilk. Buttermilk will make it nice and tender. And I add about half of it. And then I use a bench scraper, a plastic flexible bench scraper, and just start gently folding in the dry ingredients into the wet ingredients. You don't want to just go swirling in there with your spoon and make a big wet soupy mess. You want to have it absorb into the flour a little slower. It makes a more tender product when you don't overbeat it. Nothing likes to get beaten like that. Well, that's not true. Anyway, just nice and gently fold in your wet ingredients into your dry ingredients. I'm scraping the bottom of the bowl there. Sometimes it wants to stay in a little lump. Just grab it and flip it over to the top. Now I'm adding currants. I'm on the fence about the currants, honestly. I went to our co-op and bought them specifically to do this, and you really could just use raisins. The flavor profile is not a whole lot different. They are smaller, and they are less wet, I guess, because they're smaller. So, if raisins are too plumpy for you, go for the currant, but otherwise stick with the raisins. So now we're going to turn them out and just knead them gently. By kneading, I mean just fold it over on itself and gently press, maybe about 10 times, just until your dough has really come together into a good working dough. But again, if you're too rough with these, you're just going to have tender or non-tender scones. And if it gets a little sticky, just wipe it off and put a little extra flour on there. And you can see those big chunks of butter in there. That's on purpose, you guys. It makes it good at the end. So now I'm just shaping it into a circle. You could roll these out and cut them with a cutter, but I just find that cutting them in wedges is a little more authentic feeling and easier, less things to wash. So for your benefit, I decided I would try to roll it out, but in the end I didn't really care about it that much. It felt awkward, just making sure it's not stuck to the counter there. And from here on out, I'm just going to use my hands and press it out to about half an inch to 3/4 of an inch in depth. Squish, squish, squish. And then cut it into 8 equal parts. The recipe said this was supposed to make like 15 or 16 scones. I definitely got 8. So your mileage may vary. I like a big scone. One of the things about baked goods that I found I would get disappointed about is that when you go to a store, they're nice hefty portions, and then sometimes when you make them at home, they're just sad and little. Anyway, so before I cut it, I should have put it on the parchment, and the parchment should be on the pan already. That way you don't have to try to awkwardly pick it up later, as I do. But if you go ahead and get it on the parchment, you can flour your baking bench scraper and cut that up, and then add a simple egg wash, which is just an egg with a tablespoon of water mixed into it. Brush that on top. It makes it nice and brown. It also helps the Demerara sugar to stay attached on top while it bakes. You could use sanding sugar. You could use cinnamon sugar. You could use whatever you want. You don't have to use anything at all. But still brush it with the egg wash because it makes it nice and brown and pretty while it bakes. But I like that little extra crunch and sweetness on top. If you notice, it only has 2 tablespoons of sugar in the recipe, so these are not very sweet at all. So it's okay to have a little bit on top to go with it. There's that awkward transfer. Only one moved. I just have to fix that before it goes in the oven. You want them separated enough so that they don't bake together, but you still want them close enough that the edges don't get crazy browned. So I left them in the oven for a few minutes longer than it stated in the recipe. It said 12 to 15 minutes, but I think I went closer to 18 or 19 minutes. And I got a lovely crispy bottom. But you see how the sides aren't super browned? And here I'm going to plate them up for us with a cup of tea. And then I'm going to go back and realize that I really wasn't in frame. And I'm going to move the plate for you so you can see our pretty scones. These freeze very well before you bake them. So if you get to the point where, I'm going to make scones, make a double batch and throw a batch in the freezer. And then when you want scones, you can just take them straight from the freezer into the oven and bake them off and have a lovely treat. because these don't really keep very well. They're really only good for a day. See, right now they're still warm as I'm doing this, and look how tender that inner dough looks, or scone. It's not dough anymore, it's bread. And they're just delightful when they're warm and fresh. But by the evening of the same day, even, they're not all that hot anymore. And the next day, you're not going to want to eat that. So put them in the freezer and then bake on demand. Hey, so hopefully that all turned out great. And look, I brought some for you. There you go. Have a scone. Pass them around. Maybe you don't like baking, but I bet you like eating. I quickly found my place in my first knitting group by making sure to bring baked goods often, and you know, I felt loved right away. Anyway, so let's talk about some knitting. Wanted to let you know too, I am going to be posting the show notes on my website, woolensandnosh.com. There'll be a link for that, podcast, show notes, whatever. And I'll have recipes, links to recipes if they exist, and the patterns and yarn and all that information will all be in those notes there. So you can find them there. And if you don't see what you need there, then of course, email me or leave a message below. All right, so my first work in progress that I want to talk about is my granny stripe blanket. Oh, so many people are doing this, and they should do it. It's lovely, but you drink the Kool-Aid, you jump off the hill with the rest of the lemmings, but it's so fun. It's so perfect. This time of year in Vermont is, this is typically my hibernation time. So normally this time of year, you just would not see me out and about. I would be hunkered down, doing some crafting, self-care kinds of things. I mean, I still get out and take care of responsibilities, and I don't turn into a complete hermit, but I do hibernate. And this is a perfect hibernating project. It's also perfect because it's a lot easier on my hands. The last several years, since we moved here really, I can't do a whole lot of hardcore sweater knitting or using rustic yarns because the tendinitis flares up so bad, I think because of the cold. So, you want to see it? Okay, so it's in fingering weight yarn. It's Scrappy, and it's leftovers from all of my socks and various shawls and different projects. Isn't it lovely? So I started it in December, and I have a good maybe 14 to 16 inches on it. I haven't measured it yet. But it's a little more, it's probably just shy of 400 grams worth of yarn. I've been making magic knot balls. Do you guys know these? And it's as big as my face. I made another magic knot ball this weekend, and I've got all kinds of stuff. I've got some of my yarn, Miss Babs, Plank and Stella. Oh gosh, so many fun dyers in here. Some mustache yarn and some all kinds of things. So this is over 400 grams as well. So by the time I get done with this, I'll be 8 hanks of yarn in, basically, all from leftover, well, just a few minis. My husband was so sweet. I was telling him about Row 1, the company that you can order the mystery mini sets from. The Grocery Girls talk about them a lot on their podcast. It's their sponsor, actually. But I was telling my husband about it, and that I was doing this Scrappy blanket, and I'd never really had a use for minis before, that I felt like I needed to buy separate, but I was like, hey, I'm doing a Scrappy project now, so I would love little mini sets. So he got me a subscription, and I'm going to have it for a few months. So anyway, I put those in there, and I'm using a smaller hook. It's a 3.5 millimeter. I think that's an E. And yeah, so the next couple of months, I'm just going to be hooking away on this instead of knitting sweaters or other projects that are hard on my hands or arms or things. I love it. I love it. So that's the first thing. The next thing I've got is slippers. I'm making the men's Loafer slippers felted knit by Monique Ray. First saw this by the Yarn Hoarder. She did like 100 pairs of slippers or something one year for Christmas, or several years in a row, or whatever she did. She's amazing. But so I ended up making my husband a pair a few years ago. These are them. Got leather bottoms on them, and just slip on two-tone slippers. And so you knit them with a non-superwash wool held double, and you make a giant, look, it's bigger than my face, a giant slipper, and then you put them in the washing machine with like some jeans or towels and hot soapy water, and then felt them. And you just, after a little bit, you take them out and you kind of stretch them around and see how much they've shrunk. And if once it gets to the length that you want the foot to be, you take them out and you kind of squeeze out the excess water and let them dry. So that's the first one. Now my husband loves these slippers. They are not my favorite knit. And the reason they're not my favorite knit is because every single row has, all the instructions are written out, and you have to pay attention. And lately my projects have a little bit of paying attention and then a lot of not paying attention. So I can't read, I can't watch a movie, I can't do anything except sit there with my row counter so I don't lose track and knit. That being said, I knit the whole first slipper and sewed on the top and got it all ready in probably 2.5 hours. I mean, like, I started in the evening and finished before I went to bed. So if I would just shut up and do it, I'd have another set of slippers for myself. So maybe I'll do that tonight. Just knock it out, and then next time I'll show you my felted slippers. I'm using Wool of the Andes from Knit Picks. The purple is Haze Heather. And the gray is Mist. Love this stuff for felting. It felt great. I mean, if you look at my husband's, I marled his with 2 different colors. I can't remember what they are now. But I held 1 strand each of the 2 different colors. I mean, you can't see an individual stitch in there anywhere. It felt so beautifully. Sorry they're so dirty. He wears them though. That's just how it is. Okay. Next, my Christmas socks. Where are those? Okay, so my next project is my Christmas socks that I cast on actually the day after Christmas. And they are a very plain vanilla sock with a heel flap and gusset. So no real pattern. Probably, well, there's plenty of patterns out there for a basic sock, but that's all this is a vanilla sock. The yarn is Joyful Noise by Knitterly Things on her Vesper sock base. And yeah, so I'm loving that. I need to get the other. I don't know about you, but I am that kind of person that I can definitely bust out a pair of socks eventually. So if I'm really going on it and feeling the groove, I can finish a plain vanilla sock in like a day and a half. But I'll never finish 2 socks in 3 days, because after I finish that first sock, I don't want to look at that sock anymore for a little while. So I go and maybe I'll knit a different sock, or maybe I'll work on a different project, and then another couple of weeks later I'll come back and I'll knit the second sock. So this one's been done for a while, but I found my crochet blanket and I found some other things that I was working on, so I'll get back to it, but I do love it. She is definitely one of my, gosh, I want to be as good as her one day kind of people when it comes to dyeing self-striping yarn. And since I got up to get those socks, I also went to go get the bubble sweater. So here it is. I'm knitting the smallest size for my daughter. She's 10. It's going to be a little big on her, but she'll be able to grow into it. And the yarn I'm using is from Hampton Fiber Mill. He started doing a marled color this year, and that's what the pink and yellow color is. So think his version of spin cycle yarns, and then paired that with his putty gray. So I think it's so cute. It's gonna be just darling on her. The instructions are pretty basic, easy to follow. I mean, like, they're typical Stephen West instructions. I was really shocked that, like, the collar is the same, and all the instructions are basically the same for everyone throughout the yoke. Which is like, is that right? Does that seem right? But I think it's going to be fine. Oh, it looks so fun on camera. That inspires me. And it has the folded, ribbed collar. It'll be nice and cozy for her. I need to finish it before it gets too warm to wear it. So yeah, I'm done with the hard part. Now it's just stockinette all the way down and some sleeves. And it'll be good to go. I think that's all my works in progress. Finished items that I'm wearing right now, my Mano sweater by Isabel Kramer. Again, this is the New England sweater yarn, and it's the his Marled series. This is the autumn color. Whoa! With just his natural color as the color work. And I'll do a little. Oh, I love it so much. And then the hat that I've got is, oh, hat head, is the March hat, which you can kind of see the patterning a little bit. I used DK and a strand of mohair. It's Legacy Fiber Arts that I picked up in Rhinebeck this year. Edward Scissorhands, and I think it's Silver Linings for the mohair. But it was such a joy to knit this hat. It had the texture on it is kind of lost because of the mohair and the speckledy nature of the yarn, but I don't care. It feels so good, and I mean, you can kind of see that halo. That halo is so pretty. But I needed that. This project, don't you love it when you get the project that comes together exactly when you need it? Like the level of engagement and the fabric that it makes and the time length that it takes to do it. Like, it all just magically happened. Ooh. And it was just perfect. And it's very slouchy, and I love it. Okay, so those are my two finished objects. What I've been reading: The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. The Leslie from the Knit Girls had talked about reading The Night Circus, and I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. So I listened to that on audiobook, and I'm actually listening to The Starless Sea on audiobook as well, which has just been enthralling. I am about 2 hours left before it's done, and I really, the audiobook is fantastic. The actors they have to read the different sections of it, wow, love listening to them. I put it in when I'm in the car. I put it in on my headphones at night while I'm crocheting. I would be listening to it right now if I wasn't doing this. It's so great. Can't recommend it enough. And then I just picked up at the library the 5th season. It's the first in a trilogy. Something about how the world ends. I'm only 13 pages into it, but it sort of seems to have a paranormal-esque, like elemental magic something. I don't know. I'll let you know how it goes. If you've read it, don't spoil it, but let me know if you liked it. It's got lots of awards, and I mean, it won the Hugo. All 3 books in the series won the Hugo like 3 years in a row. So I have hopes that it's going to be great, but I just haven't gotten that far yet. And then I have been watching Witcher on Netflix. I am not a gamer. My son is, but so he'll give me little nuggets here and there, but so I didn't know that there was a game about it, and I hadn't read the books, but watched the series, and now I want to read the books. And I don't usually like the actor that plays Gerard. He's the same guy that played Superman. He's not my favorite, but I do like him in this. He grunts really well. Like, it's so perfect. Like, it's a very non-forced sort of natural grunt, and that seems to be like a signature of that character, so it's good that he does it well. Let's talk about what's in the shop. So I haven't had a shop update in a little while, but I do have some stock that's available in there now, and I'll just kind of run through briefly and show you the samples of the different yarns that are available. Okay, so to begin with, we've got Oh Hello You, and then I've got some autumn inspired colorways that still have some stock. I have a picture of pumpkins inspired by those cool heritage funky colored pumpkins. I think I have 1 or 2 left of Fall Is My Favorite. And it really is my favorite. I've been wearing this sock. It looks pretty tired, but I think you can see how it goes. And then I have Deep Fall. This is shown on the tweed base, which is sold out. But I do have it on Targhee, I believe, Targhee Sport, and that's this little baby hat that I made with it. And then I've got this fun Ashen Veil purpley colorway. I always frown when I look at my stuff that I'm showing. Smile, Michelle. I'm losing my hat. That's okay. And then I have, this is a fun one. If you happen to be a fan of the Handmaid's Tale, this is my Handmaid's Tale inspired colorway, and I did it on the Do-Si-Do socks from the Crazy Sock Lady. So we've got the commanders and the wives and the aunts and the handmaids and the Marthas and the children. They're kind of fun. And then this is Meadow Sprite on Rye Light is the pattern that I used for that. With nice thick sections, and then the colors repeated as thin stripes. And then finally, City Blues. And that City Blues, I also have that on DK right now. I made a hat with it. So I made a pattern of, I dyed these sets, these kits, where it has a full 100 gram skein, a 100% merino, and a DK, and self-striping, and then a matching tonal to go with it. And I have a pattern for a cowl that you can make with this kit. But if you didn't want to make the cowl, you can use it for lots of other things. So I made a hat out of it. This is by Staci from Very Pink Knits. It's her folded brim hat. I'll have a link in the show notes. So it's super cozy and warm. So I've got all that. And then I've also got new stuff. Hold on, I know it's offensive. It's not offensive. It doesn't really matter. Okay. So that's all the stock that I had up until this point that is left over from the before Christmas. And since Christmas, I've been working on a new line. I'm calling it the Kiss Sock Sets. Keep it simple striping sets. I'm getting that wrong, and I think I'm getting a little like tired of talking. My mouth is physically tired from talking. Whoop. Whoop. Okay. I'm so excited about these. So I have been knocking my brain on how to make fun self-striping sock sets that are a little more affordable. Well, sometimes you want something a little more affordable, but something that you'll still really love. I'm gonna do one base, 3 colors in the striping sequence only. I'm limiting myself to that, which is a fun framework to work within. But then also including a mini of a contrasting color. And the skeins are going to be 80 grams of self-striping and then a 20 gram mini. And I'm going to sell that for $24. Okay, so let me show you what they are. There's so much talking. Okay, the first one I'm going to show you is, I'm calling it Sunfish. So it's got a dark blue, a medium blue, and a light gray with a bright orange mini. And here's how it looks knit up. So I've done a little more than 6 inches for the leg and cuff, and then enough to fit my 8.5 size US women's shoe size with a heel flap and gusset. Just a vanilla sock. Next is Pink Carnations. So the sequence for the striping section is the pink, green, and dark green. And then I did a hot purple to coordinate with it. Hot purple, deep purple. But I got bored with doing cuffs and toes, so I just stuck the purple in a couple of spots in the striping sequence just to throw it off a little bit and give it a little something different and fun. And then finally, I've got honey, which has light and dark. Hi, Molly. My daughter
I'm scared out of my little mind.
I rearranged all the furniture in order to do the podcast, and my daughter just came home, and her little mind is blown.
Why is the couch in the hallway? I can't get to my room now.
You're gonna have to come around. Okay, so dark brown, and then a medium gold and a light golden honey color, and I'm pairing it with this pretty muted turquoisey color. And I'm still working on this sample. I did a toe up. It'll have an afterthought heel. So yeah. And the stripes are thick enough that these are 64 stitch socks.
Hi, are you posting this on YouTube?
I will be, yes.
Okay.
So this is my daughter Molly.
Hi.
Hello.
I was in one of those baby videos.
They won't see those baby videos. This is a whole different channel.
Okay.
Anyway. Here, Molly, have a scone. Right there.
Okay.
After school.
That little gingerbread man, that's kind of scary.
She's looking at her Christmas tree, which is still up, and it will continue to be up probably until February, and she doesn't like one of the ornaments on there. Oh well. Say bye, Molly.
Bye. No. Fun.
Anyway, so even on a 72 stitch stock, you will still get 5 stripes. 5 rows of striping per color. So nice representation of each color. And I will also be testing it out for hats and mitts. The mitts will be very similar, I think, in terms of how the striping looks. And then for hats, I think you'll get like a sock head hat. You'll still get a decent, at least 2 to 2.5 rows per color. Yeah, so that I'm hoping to come out with another 2 to 3 colors a month to add to the repertoire and give people something that they can do that isn't so expensive. I don't know. I would love your feedback and let me know what you think. So all of these have some stock ready to go up in the shop. I'll be posting them on Friday the 24th, I think, in the morning, early in the morning. I have several sets of each color.
How do you know there's specifics on when you're going to post them? That's a little weird.
Anyway, and they're all ready to ship. So yeah, feel free to check that out. All right, y'all.
Did you make these scones?
I did make those scones.
Very delicious.
Thank you so much. Did you hear that? One commentary. Try the scones. Anyway, I had fun baking with you. I had fun talking knitting with you. And as this goes on, I will be less nervous and more natural.
Did you make this recipe?
And hopefully we'll have some fun together. Okay?
Don't hide it from them.
Thank you so much for joining me, and I will see you soon.